Lovely sounds there from Roots Connection Band. You'll continue enjoying those beautiful songs as we continue the Power Breakfast today. And now we continue with our news review this morning with Senators Boni Halwale and Kimani Wamatangi, and also member of the National Assembly from Makueni, Daniel Manzo. Now, just before the break, we were discussing President Uhuru Kenyatta's utterances in Makueni with regard to the health crisis. And you mentioned that you wanted to say something.
Yes, I just wanted to stand by my colleagues, the doctors and nurses, and assure them that we understand as leaders of this country. We understand that they are in a state of ambivalence between their medical calling and between their own very family personal survival. The balance of issues requires that we are now thinking as senators, and my brother here, Maondo, that we reconvene the National Assembly and the Senate as a matter of grave national importance to address this issue. Why we need to do this is because Jubilee in her manifesto, they were very clear that they were going to increase the funding to health, the financing of health by 6 to 15%. They also said they were going to give free health care to all Kenyans, and they said that they were going to increase the remunerations of health workers. So what the doctors are doing, they are simply asking Jubilee to implement its own manifesto. Okay. We are going to stand with them, and I really want to send my condolences to the family of all the 19 people who have died, and especially the patient in Provincial General Hospital, Kakamega, who 2 days ago, upon being discharged, because he knew he could not afford a private medical hospital, he went and took the wife's lasso and hanged himself in the ward and died.
Well, indeed, very unfortunate happenings across the country as the doctors and nurses strike enters its 4th day today. But I want us to move on to other headlines this morning, and looking at the front page of the Daily Nation. A fresh bid to probe Kidero NGO's cash. NGO board orders investigation into source of Evans Kidero's foundation reaches. Now, the story is on page 6 of the Daily Nation, and a foundation associated with the Nairobi governor is being investigated over the source of an alleged 2.7 billion shillings in its bank accounts. A source at the NGO Coordination Board in Nairobi told the Nation that the Evans Kidero Foundation, whose treasurer is Dr. Kidero's son, Mr. Ronald Odhiambo, had allegedly not submitted audited returns to the board for the last 3 years. Now, Bwana Wamatangi, this means bad times for the governor, don't you think? When questions such as this are being raised in an election year, 8 months to the election, 8 months to the elections?
Politically, yes, it has its effect, but I'll mention that as my second point. My first point is it would be important also to clear to the minds of our people that you see, when somebody or a family runs a foundation, because I ran one. I have a foundation that I registered about 15 years ago, and I started from a very low, low level. I mean, helping young people to register in a college I had opened in Kiambu from very poor families, and I've been educating them, through IT courses and driving courses, riding borders, the very, very low of the lowly, and giving them licenses and getting them to do a few things. And then now that's how I graduated into my water tank project. And in a foundation you can go far and wide in seeking finances for support, including internationally. And I've not yet gotten to that level myself. I normally try to do as much as I can with the little resources that I've got. But it is possible. Yesterday I was reading something on the Clinton Foundation, which was online, and if you look at the kind of figures they talk about, how they have disbursed them the people help, it's quite big, very huge figures. And so it is possible, if these funds would come from all these sources, that you can have those kind of money. And of course, in a foundation there are rules. There are also board members who show how the money is supposed to be. Well. Of course, they're subject to audit. And the second point that I would want to make, as you say, is the political point. Of course, that being brought about during an election year is a big issue. Definitely, it gets people to think: is it possible that maybe if it's the governor that he's got these funds not in a right way or in a wrong way. But I think the fair thing to do is to let the audit be done, let people see where these funds have come from, and how they're being put to use. More so, if really this foundation is undertaking work in communities that have helped or do help people, like I'm a witness to this myself, and so I would want to be very fair on that one.
And of course, this is not the first negative headline. In terms of perception, it is a negative headline against the governor this week. On Monday, of course, an audit queries raised by the Auditor General. The queries amounting to amounts up to 20 billion shillings of county funds, Nairobi, and it said that when it comes to corruption, the headline on the Daily Nation read that when it comes to corruption, the Nairobi county government is in its own league. Now, 3 days later, you see another headline against the same man, and of course, he should be worried about such things in an election year.
You know, I've been reading reports of the Auditor General for many years, but I'm not happy with what I read on Nairobi. Sendro Matangi. Imagine the total amount of money at the disposal of the county government of Nairobi was 23 billion.
Yes.
Then the auditor tells us that out of that 23 billion, 20 billion was stolen.
No, the accusation is not direct. They don't say it was stolen. So just raised queries on how that amount was spent.
So I'm building my argument. It is not the accuracy of the figures, but the fact that there is smoke in that house called the county government of Nairobi. So where there is smoke, there is fire. There is no reason why his private NGO cannot have a lot of money, because it depends on how well he fundraises. But problems start emerging. How come on the membership of the board, 2 of the officials are employees of the county government of Nairobi? Some of us have raised queries on Kidero. We are in court. We are restrained by court, for example, personally. Quickly, what would come on my mind is that this NGO, because it didn't start yesterday, could also have fed on where else he has worked. But because I'm restrained by a court order to discuss matters of Mias Sugar Company, I will not go there. I'll just leave it there. But Kidero should run his foundation in a transparent manner. He should make sure that the accounts are audited. He should make sure that people with conflicting interests, like the guys who work for the county government of Nairobi, do not sit on the board.
Yes. Now, Bonamanz, of course, the Nairobi County government leadership is a joint ticket between ODM and Wiper.
Yes.
And the Deputy Governor, Jonathan Mweke, is a member of your party. Yes. So, of course, this is of concern. If there's any negative headline on Evans Kidero, it means it's a negative headline on the Deputy Governor as well.
Yes. Of course, this is about the foundation. I believe the Deputy Governor is not part of the foundation at all. And you know, foundations have their own law. And I believe Governor Kidero can account for how he should be able just to show how he has fundraised for this foundation, give statements of accounts, be audited, and the matter is cleared. I mean, this is not the only foundation with a lot of money.
Do you NGOs, for example, in that headline?
The NGOs in this country have a lot of money, and nobody is talking about them. So I think he should be given the benefit of doubt on this.
I hosted the Deputy Governor, Jonathan Mweke, on Monday this week when we were discussing that headline on the audit queries amounting to 20 billion shillings of the county government funds. And he was he accused media of being malicious. He said this is pure malice.
Yes, so because you can imagine, you know, even just by logical thinking, you don't have a budget of 23 billion in the last 5 years, and you are telling me, I mean, the county government alone has only used 3 billion, 20 has been stolen. I mean, how do you even, you can't steal so much money without obvious evidence. And I can assure you, maybe the losses are very minimal, if any, in the county government of Nairobi, because it is on paper. You can show we had this number of accounts, we have done this. Even fueling their vehicles alone is much more than 3 billion in 5 years. So and maintenance and other things. That's just one little segment. So I think it's good to be fair to the Governor Kidero. Let him be given a chance to explain, and I believe he will explain.
And in the case of that 20 billion that you discussed with the Deputy Governor, I think the Deputy Governor and the Governor themselves, they are to blame. For the reason that the documents, supporting documents that would have satisfied the auditor, when the auditor visits them, they don't get them.
Available.
They now wait to come before the Senate, is when now they want to come with those documents. So they are themselves to blame.
It is bad publicity, even if they eventually get to clarify clarify all the queries raised by the Auditor General. It is indeed bad publicity.
The damage is done.
The other headline which could be of interest to many Kenyans on the front page of the Daily Nation: price of sugar likely to go up. That story is on page 36 of the Daily Nation. Expensive imports and declining stocks locally are likely to lead to higher prices of sugar ahead of the festivities. That's something that you need to be on the lookout for. But now I want us to go back to the Standard, and the church leaders want EACC disbanded. That story is on page 3 of the Standard. And we see the church now wants the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission disbanded. In a hard-hitting address to the media, the National Council of Churches of Kenya, NCCK, said corruption in the country has reached alarming levels. NCCK accused the government of laxity in handling graft. Now, they want something else. Instead of EACC, the organization has asked the president to spearhead the repeal of the EACC Act of 2011 by Parliament, and instead have a directorate under the Office of the President to deal with the investigations and prosecution of corruption cases. Do they have a point?
You know, Fred, since when we mooted this idea and decided to action that there should be a collective approach to tackling and fighting corruption in this country, the EACC itself now, as of today, I think has had 4 different names and different leadership. Remember, it started as CASA, and then it became KACC, and then now it is EACC. It has seen so many phases, come and go, from lawyers to economists to judge of the High Court. I mean, it's been a beneficiary of all manner of input from professional Kenyans and a lot of goodwill. But I've always been very steadfast on this particular point, that the EACC, and we need to admit to this as a country, is that they have operated under extremely difficult circumstances in fighting corruption. Because if you read the Act itself and the law in the first place, it is not tailored to support that particular unit in itself. I mean, starting from the simple premise, of course sometimes they can be abused, but that they don't have in the first place
no longer needed
prosecutorial powers. And the point is this: of course, I do not agree with the notion that it should be disbanded and thrown out of the window. And the reason why I made that point, that it's operated under very different names, is that even if you take it, tailor it and take it to another department, let's say like in the OP, you still have the same challenges. The problem of fighting corruption here is because it is in the fabric of society and individuals. And the way to fight it, we are not going to fight successfully fighting corruption using only the law as written in a book, or by introducing individuals because they have got experience here and there. It must come from the minds and the hearts of the people. It must be a change of ethic. It must be a change of culture. It must be a change. I mean, yes, you can understand the frustration of a church leader, when they look at all the claims and issues of corruption. Yes, it feels that way to every Kenyan. You feel very frustrated. But I must say, in my view, that the EACC has put up a very, very, very strong fight, because those that fight to demolish EACC, once it is put in place, are those that are beneficiaries of corruption, and they're not small people.
Clearly, we need
they're big people.
After years of trying the same style, same system, and that doesn't work, we clearly need a different strategy. Do you think this one, as proposed by the church leaders, that a directorate under the Office of the President to deal with investigations and prosecution could actually work?
I really want to confirm to our clergy that I respect them. And I know in there we have very highly educated minds who are actually priests and bishops and so on. However, on this one, they are more than 100% wrong. To try and go to a directorate, go back to a directorate, would be reversing the gains in the new constitution that tried to create Chapter 6 and tried to make sure that the EACC was a strong commission that would be free from interference and manipulation. The president himself has admitted that corruption is very high at the office of the president. So if you make the investigator to be part of that very corrupt place, then you can imagine where we shall go. It is wrong. What we should be addressing, all these concerns, it's got nothing to do with the current structure of EACC. To my mind, it's a question of integrity. Unfortunately, integrity is not taught in school. It is not taught at the university. Integrity is a personal decision by a professional that I will serve. So let judge leaders not pretend that this will be a replacement for integrity. Finally, so that you don't come back to me, you have washed away the important issue of the price of sugar. Do you think we should comment a little bit?
Well, I'll give you an opportunity to talk about it. We could even look at the story in a short while.
So we will come back. Because it is extremely important. Especially to me.
I really want to say that you know, the fight against corruption should begin much, should go down to its roots, and it must be with all Kenyans. First of all, we need to inculcate values. You see, in many other countries, even when an election is taking place, where people are very civilized, there is no corruption during election. People don't kid around with the election. In Kenya, the corruption begins with election, with wananchi themselves. You want to be bought so that you vote for a certain leader. So it's a sin we all bear as a nation. And I think we need to begin teaching values, you know, from primary schools. You find that a father is driving, he has broken a traffic offense, he's carrying his children, and you bribe the police officer in front of your children. So you have told your children, this is the way to survive in the future, and they will grow with it, and the corruption will go to the next generation. So I think the country needs to restructure this. We invest more in it. First of all, we devolve EACC to counties, strengthen EACC, because corruption also begins with
so you also disagree with the idea that
yes, but they must do this also at the churches. We must also make sure that the Christians shun corruption. You know, a lot of Kenyan Christians, we are only Christians in the church. As soon as you leave the church, you look for those Christians in an office. Nobody is kind, nobody is practicing any Christian value. So the clergy should also make sure the country practices Christian values. The Muslims practice the Muslim faith the way it is. There is total respect to God. Then you begin fighting corruption from the church side. But the same church, the same clergy, he's the first one to bribe if he's in trouble with the police or in any other situation. And the same clergy person. So we need to reorganize it. But I also want to say, I want to agree with them. EACC should be restructured completely. There are a lot of incompetent, not disbanded, but totally restructured.
So the idea of a directorate,
there are a lot of incompetent people serving at EACC.
The idea of having a directorate at the office of the
directorate is really, you know, now you start mixing again the executive with, you begin breaching the constitution, and this is where we were coming from. And you know, if today now the executive is the one with bearing the biggest brand of corruption, how can it now fight corruption?
It can't.
Okay. Now because of the request by Dr. Halwale, I think it is appropriate that we look at that story on page 36 of the Daily Nation to do with sugar prices. And of course, that has been highlighted on the front page of the Daily Nation. Prices of sugar likely to go up, and there are some reasons listed here, if I could just read briefly. Now, the agriculture regulator is forecasting high sugar prices following declining local production and expensive imports, piling pressure on household budgets. Now, this is the Director General of Agriculture and Food Authority, AFA. It says high international prices of imports and low output at the factories have led to a sharp increase in the consumer price in the last couple of months. Now, stocks of sugar held by millers in the factories have declined from 8,000 tons mid last month to 6,700 tons as of Monday. Currently, a kilo of sugar retails at between 135 and 145, and that could go up to maybe 173, 180 in a matter of weeks. That is the situation.
Yeah, you see, Kenyans, we forget things so quickly. This is not just a one-off. This is a build-up from previous wrong decisions. The president announced to the country that to sort out our sugar problems, he had allowed Uganda to export its sugar into Kenya. And we leaders from the sugar belt refused that. We know Uganda had no excess sugar that it could export to Kenya. But we were defeated in our fight. Now what happened is that the sugar that was coming from Brazil and Venezuela arrives on the high seas. It comes in Mombasa. It is repackaged as sugar from Uganda, and then it was sold cheaply in the country at the expense of local sugar. So what happened is that the local farmer in Kakamega and Bungoma and Migori and Kisumu then got discouraged. They stopped producing. Once the cartels have realized that now they have killed local production, they have now increased the price. They are cheating us that the international sugar price, no. The so-called international sugar price of Mr. Businessman Mheshimiwa, the cartels have sat here in Nairobi and Mombasa, have said, let's go and tell Kenya that the international sugar price has gone up, so as for them to make a kill.
What about the suggestion that the high prices of sugar are becoming cyclic in the years preceding the general elections? For example, they're saying in the story that in 2011, just a year before the elections, a kilogram of sugar retailed at 173 shillings. A price that is yet to be breached.
Yes, because the sugar cartels, that is a very easy way of fundraising for elections.
Do you agree that...
the first, you remember Senator Halwale saying on the issue of doctors that he wishes that the president calls these people to State House and makes a declaration. I was tempted to tell Senator Halwale, now that he is the senator of the sugar producing belt, he should call these people to his palace and tell them not to increase the price of sugar. But I live in a house. But that notwithstanding, I think one, an increase in the price of sugar, we must say clearly would be a big blow to the Kenyan consumer, and especially I always advocate for those that are the masses, the lowly, because they will be the hardest hit, and that's something the country can ill afford. But let me say this from a businessman's perspective, because these are some of the areas that I think I could comment from knowledge and experience. Is that in sugar trade especially, the level of manipulation of pricing and import and hoarding of the product and that this sugar, like most of these bulk commodities, wheat and maize, are operated by big cartels that are spread a whole long line, from the importation source to the shipper themselves to the warehouses, and until now the bulk retailers who are wholesalers or distributors. It's normally a whole cartel, and they can start the operation right there from the source and close the gate and cause a huge effect here, which they know that they are timing at a certain time, and then now they start to release in small doses, and now and call for high prices. No, of course it is. It is the regulations of trade. I mean, it is a criminal offense to hoard a product because you know that you have the single ability to bring it in and keep it. I mean, in free trade, and according to our own laws, once you bring in a product and you've been given, and remember in sugar importation, you must have a permit. Once you've brought it in, you're supposed to distribute it, but holding a product so that you can influence the prices is in itself wrong.
You know, there is something that you guys call the free market forces,
and by you guys mean business,
the business people, and we are consumers. The free market forces. It is premised on the only one principle, that the law of supply and demand will be respected.
Yeah.
But what these cartels do in the Muri is that they don't allow the law of supply and demand to guide them. Instead, they go and control supply. They hoard. And then the market forces are misdirected to indicate that there is a shortage of a particular product. So I want to agree with the Senator of Kiambu that the problem is, one, those cartels, and add by saying the security agencies have failed on this one, because they're the ones which are supposed to bust those warehouses and find this illegal storage and what have you. And then finally, the issue of policy. The government has failed on policy when they allowed, in quotes, Uganda to export sugar here when there was no sugar. They opened the floodgates for unaccustomed sugar to come into Kenya, and the consequences have stated.
Dan Manzo, of course, it's a different headline, but still same situation, corruption at a different level. But this one touches the common mwananchi directly. When the prices of sugar go up, of course, the people will have to go without that commodity.
Well, you know, I'm in the Committee of Agriculture in Parliament, and I'm aware that the AFA, which is now talking about this, you know, the AFA Directorate, an issue. There was there was an attempt to reorganize the whole of agriculture system in the country, and now AFA is overloaded. It has more than it can bite. I don't think it is performing as it should, and I don't think they are managing this sugar issue properly. They have the law. It's like they're like a toothless bulldog. They are just there to bark, and they can't bite anybody. They can't touch anybody. They have no mechanism to deal with this sugar issue, and that's why most of the issues are pending in court. But I believe Parliament can help, and this is a matter which needs to be relooked afresh, so that we reorganize the way AFA directs the agriculture matters, not just only sugar, but many other things, so that they can be able to be fully in charge. But as of this matter of sugar, they are not really in charge. They are being run by cartels, and they are really helpless.
And also on policy, I've forgotten to add, there's another policy statement which has been made and which is very dangerous. The scrapping of sugar development levy. What the sugar development levy was doing is that it was developing cane production. So now they have scrapped it, and now
so there's no incentive.
There is no incentive. Why the presidency allows or rather, let me just put the executive, allows this kind of lousy policy decision to be made and be effected? It beats us as the opposition.
Of course, that story is on the Daily Nation. Time now for another short break, but when we return, Moi and Kibaki pension goes up to 74 million shillings starting next year. That story is on page 10 of the Daily Nation. And of course, political parties oppose campaign financing rules which kick off today. Remember, the ban on Harambee starts today, and also the campaign financing rules also begin today. We'll be discussing that and a lot more.
There are a lot of headlines today. And busy.